Hello friends, welcome to English Goeta YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss Aristotle's views on tragedy. I will begin my discussion with the brief introduction to Aristotle. Aristotle was an ancient Greek philosopher and scientist who is still considered as one of the greatest thinkers in politics, psychology, and ethics. Aristotle was born in 384 BC and died in 322 BC. Aristotle was Plato's disciple. When Aristotle turned 17, he enrolled in Plato's academy. He spent 20 years there, first as a student and then as a teacher. He is also known as the tutor of Alexander the Great. In 338 BC, he began tutoring Alexander the Great. Before that, in 335 BC, Aristotle founded his own school, the Lyceum in Athens, where he spent most of the rest of his life studying, teaching, and writing. Here he composed approximately 200 works, of which only 31 survive. Some of his most notable works include History of Animals, On Generation and Corruption, Sophistical Refutations, Ode to Virtue, On the Heavens, Metaphysics, Posterior Analytics, Nicomachean Ethics, Poetics, and On Interpretation. His writings cover many subjects, including physics, biology, zoology, metaphysics, logic, ethics, aesthetics, poetry, theater, music, rhetoric, psychology, linguistics, economics, politics, and government. He has written many critical treatises, but only two, Poetics and Rhetoric, are remaining. Poetics deals with the art of poetry, and Rhetoric deals with the art of speaking. In this video, I am going to discuss very briefly some of the views of Aristotle on tragedy expressed in Poetics. Poetics is a short book of about 50 pages containing 26 small chapters. The first 4 chapters and the 25th chapter talk about poetry. The 5th chapter is about comedy, epic, and tragedy. And the following 14 chapters, chapters 6 to 19, have been devoted to an exclusive discussion of tragedy. The next 3 chapters, chapters 20, 21, and 22, talk about poetic diction. The next 2 chapters, chapters 23 and 24, discuss epic, and the last chapter, chapter 26, makes a comparison between epic and tragedy. It was Aristotle who, for the first time, gave serious thought to the problem of tragedy and formed a theory, which remains important even today on account of its inherent elasticity and comprehensiveness. Aristotle's definition of tragedy runs thus: tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude, in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play, in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear, effecting the proper catharsis or purgation of these emotions. This definition has wide implications. It falls naturally into two parts. The first part, from tragedy is an imitation of an action to not of narrative, is concerned with tragedy as one of the imitative arts that imitates human action. Action here does not mean mere outward physical movements, but also inward working of mind and soul. It also points out tragedies objects of imitation, medium of imitation, and manner of imitation. The second part, through pity and fear, effecting the proper catharsis or purgation of these emotions, is concerned with the function and emotional effects of tragedy. First of all, the definition shows how tragedy is different from other forms of poetry prevailing at that time. In Aristotle's time, there were four major forms of poetry: lyric, epic, tragedy, and comedy. Tragedy's objects of imitation are serious actions, and hence it is different from comedy because comedy imitates non-serious actions. By the term serious, Aristotle denotes that it must have certain grandeur and sublimity. Secondly, by in language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, Aristotle refers to the medium of tragedy's imitation. On the basis of its medium, tragedy is distinguished from the lyric. Tragedy employs several kinds of embellishments in different parts. By various kinds of embellishments in various parts, Aristotle means verse and song. Verse in the action part of the play and song in the choric part. Lastly, tragedy on the basis of its manner of imitation is different from the epic because epic narrates and does not represent through action. Next, Aristotle says that the action that tragedy imitates must be complete and of a certain magnitude. Here, complete is that which has a beginning, middle, and an end. The proper beginning is that from which further action flows out and which is intelligible in itself. Beginning should not be dependent on any previous situation. The middle is that which follows inevitably upon what has gone before, but at the same time it also leads on to an inevitable conclusion. A satisfying end is that which follows inevitably upon what has gone before, but which does not lead to further action. It should mark the completion of the tragic action. There should be nothing after the end. Again, certain magnitude is defined qualitatively. Here, the word magnitude has been used in the sense of size or length. The action of tragedy must be long enough to permit an orderly development of incidents to a catastrophe. Too short an action cannot be regarded as proper and beautiful because its different parts will not be clearly visible as in the case of a very small living creature. Neither it should be too long, for in that case it will not be taken in as an artistic whole by the memory. The action should be proportionate in the relation of the different parts to each other and to the whole. It must be an organic whole. Aristotle enumerates 6 formative elements of a tragedy: plot, character, thought, song, diction, and spectacle. Of these 6 elements, he gives seminal importance to plot. Aristotle says that there can be a tragedy without character but none without plot. Aristotle divides the plots of tragedy into 2 kinds: simple and complex. He calls a plot simple when the change in the fortune of the hero takes place without peripety and anagnorisis. And the plot is complex when it involves peripety or anagnorisis or both. Peripety is a sudden change in a story of the play which results in a negative reversal of circumstances. It is also known as a significant change or the turning point which leads to the crisis of a play. At this point, the tragic protagonist's fortune changes from good to bad. Shylock in the trial scene and Hamlet's stabbing of Polonius are appropriate examples of this principle. On the other hand, anagnorisis, that is recognition or discovery, is a startling transition from ignorance to knowledge. The protagonist does something and the opposite happens. He kills an enemy and after killing finds him to be a friend. Anagnorisis is the point in the plot of a tragic play at which the protagonist recognizes his or her or some other character's true identity or discovers the true nature of his or her own situation. Even inanimate things can be the objects of recognition. For example, the handkerchief in Othello reveals the true situation. Coming to a consideration of the character, the tragic hero, Aristotle lays down that he should be a man of mixed character, neither blameless nor a confirmed villain. His misfortunes should be the result of some error or flaw in his character, and he must fall from the height of prosperity and glory to adversity. Such a man will help the tragedy in arousing the emotions of pity and fear, which is known as catharsis or purgation, and this is the function of tragedy. The spectacle or the scenic effects have more to do with stagecraft than with the writing of poetry. Aristotle writes, fear and pity can be produced by spectacular means, but it is much better to produce them by the way you write your play. Diction means the interpretation of the sentiments of the characters in the form of language. It hardly matters whether the language is metrical or not. Thought is the power of saying whatever can be said or what is appropriate to the occasion. Thought is the intellectual element in a tragedy, and it is expressed through the speech of a character. Song is to be found in the choric parts of a tragedy, which distinguishes the tragedy from the lyric. The purpose of tragedy, in the opinion of Aristotle, is to give pleasure. One thing is to be noted that Aristotle knew only Greek tragedy. His conclusions are based on the drama with which he was familiar. Therefore, the theory of tragedy might have its weaknesses, and hence Aristotle's views are not of universal application. It is very difficult to explain Aristotle's views on tragedy comprehensively in such a short span of time. I have tried to make this illustration as brief and simple as possible. I hope this explanation will be useful to you. Wish you all the luck for the upcoming time. Goodbye, and please take very good care of yourself and your family.